Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. That's Heath Cummings. And we got your starts and sits for you for week number 3. And let's start, of course, with the start of the week. Kirk Cousins playing in the daytime. Don't have to worry about that nighttime. Don't have to be afraid of the dark, Kirk. You get the Lions. A very good matchup for you. They've already faced 2 quarterbacks that have given up 24 fantasy points or more to. That was Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz. Cousins loves facing the Lions. In his last 5 meetings against them, averaging over 296 passing yards per game. 3 of the last 4, he scored at least 25 fantasy points. So back at home, favorable matchup. You see we're all in on Kirk Cousins, top 7 quarterback or better. Heath, you and I have him at number 6. We're shy of Sportsline that has him number 5. Is this going to be a big week for Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, I mean, you said 24 or more fantasy points for quarterbacks against the Lions. 24 would be a down game for Kirk Cousins against the Lions.
Yeah.
He has absolutely destroyed this defense in his career. I think we know why. They never put the Lions in primetime, so he never has to play them in a primetime game.
That is true. Although if you ever got them on Thanksgiving, you never know how that would go, so we'll see. But yes, great opportunity for Kirk Cousins to bounce back in the day. Only 10 fantasy points last week. He will do much better against Detroit in this matchup. Some other starts for me include a couple of receivers that I'm curious to see how they do. One, bouncing back from 2 poor performances in DK Metcalf. The other, building off a strong game in Devontae Smith. But Derek Carr, David Montgomery, and Tyler Higbee, 3 other starting options. But let's talk about these receivers here because they are very polarizing. So Devontae Smith coming off a strong game last week. We heard Nick Sirianni say going into week 2 against the Vikings that we got to get Devontae Smith more involved. 7 targets, 7 catches, strong performance there. Dave, you're a little bit closer to I am on Devontae Smith. Heath, you're way in the other direction. For me, it's about this Washington secondary. I don't think they're very good. I think we're going to see Devontae Smith have another strong performance. Dave, you talk about the positives. Heath, what's your concern?
Defenses have tried to go deep against this Commanders defense. 7 targets of 20-plus yards down the field. That's right in the wheelhouse of Devontae Smith. A lot of the incompletions are because of overthrown passes. I think there was 1 pass breakup. It might have been an interception that Washington actually had. I think Hurts continues to find Devontae Smith. I love the 100% catch rate from last week. I think Smith is worth starting as a high-end flex.
Yeah, I mean, I think he needed the 100% catch rate, though, because he still just had 7 targets. He got 11 targets in 2 games. And you talk about the deep ball. His average depth of target was 13.9 last year. It's fallen to 7.2 this year. If he's a 6 target per game guy and all those targets are within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, it's not going to be very excited unless he catches all of his targets.
We'll see how he does. I was encouraged, though, by what I saw last week. So, in fact, the fact that they get him more involved, and obviously a lot of attention has to be to Jalen Hurts and the 2 other receivers. I think this is an opportunity to still buy back into him and also to buy back into DK Metcalf. We saw last week that Geno Smith can actually support a wide receiver. Tyler Lockett going over 100 yards. Metcalf has yet to have a big game. This is a game where they're favored at home. Who knows how many times they're going to be favored at home. And maybe it's a Rashad Penny game. Maybe it's an opportunity to lean on their ground game. But I do think that based on the secondary and what they've given up so far through 2 games, a lot of big plays, I think Metcalf could have an opportunity to find the end zone. That's going to be the key because he'll probably be in that 6 to 8 target range, which is what he's been through the first 2 weeks. I don't think he's a slam dunk must start guy, so it just depends on what your lineup looks like. But Metcalf, I think, has got the chance to finally deliver on what a lot of fantasy managers were hoping for when they drafted him. So you can use him as a number 2 fantasy receiver in this matchup. All right, Dave, let's take a look at your starts here, and a couple names on this list that are very intriguing. I love the running backs here, Ezekiel Elliott and Damian Pierce in particular. You got Juju Smith-Schuster and Curtis Samuel. Let's start with Zeke, because a lot of fantasy managers clearly out on him, but this feels like a game where he could have some success against the Giants.
I was out on him during draft season. I don't think I have him on any of my teams, but this week I kind of wish I did, and he's going to be in my DFS lineups because of the matchup against the Giants. They're allowing just over 5 yards per carry to opposing running backs, 3.9 yards after contact per attempt. No Leonard Williams, 11 missed tackles. That's a recipe for a good matchup. And how about this? Zeke has hit at least 5 yards on 12 of his 25 carries so far this year. He's got better efficiency than Tony Pollard on his runs right now, and he's getting more work than Tony Pollard. So I'm kind of pushing my chips in for this 1 week on Ezekiel Elliott.
Just a little bit concerned about how much volume he's going to get. Like, he did have 15 carries last week, turned it into 53 yards. He has 2 catches on the season. He has -7 receiving yards on the season. He doesn't have a catch that's gone for positive yardage, so I don't know if he has any catches at all in this game.
The biggest thing for me is Leonard Williams. If Williams is out, it's a great situation. If Williams is in, even at less than 100%, this Giants run defense has actually done a nice job through 2 games. Now, granted, it was playing Christian McCaffrey, who we know is not the most dominant of runners, and Derrick Henry, clearly they were able to contain him in week 1. McCaffrey obviously does a lot of his damage.
5 yards per carry to opposing running backs.
Yeah, but it's given the 2 matchups though that they faced, you would expect a lot more knowing what those
Zeke's looked okay. I mean, despite what he said about him in the passing game, I still don't mind his efficiency as a runner.
Talk to me about Juju, because one solid game in week 1, a little bit of a disappointing game in week 2. You know what? Let's go Dameon Pierce first. Let's talk. We'll save the receiver for afterwards. So
Sure.
Dameon Pierce, what do you like about the situation against the Bears?
I love that he's starting to play more than Rex Burkhead in week 2, which is what it should have been all along. I don't know why he took a back seat to him in week number 1, but 63% of the snaps. I love that. 2 of 3 snaps inside the 10. I thought his vision and his patience needed a little bit of work, but his power, his burst, these are the things that I think he can build on and get better. And that Texans offensive line also looked good. Chicago last week against the Packers, 5.9 yards per rush allowed, and they wound up bottom 6 in pretty much every single rush defense metric imaginable last week. I think Pierce gets the work. I think he finds the end zone. It's a favorable matchup for him. I'm trusting him as a number 2 running back.
And I'm just the outlier of all outliers. I have him much closer to where you guys do in non-PPR, but in full PPR, he has 2 targets on the season. Again, I'm not sure he's going to catch a pass in this game. Not sure he's going to score a touchdown. That makes it hard to rank him too high.
It just comes down to, I think, that, for both teams, it's a winnable game.
Right.
So if the Texans have an opportunity to lean on their ground game, and they've been in both games, clearly they had a lead against the Colts, and they were there with the Broncos last week. So Pierce, building off what he did last week, I'm with you. The Bears I don't think the Bears are running away with this game,
right,
if they win this game. So I think it's an opportunity for Pierce to get a lot of work.
Yep.
Juju, back to him. So good week 1, bad week 2. Patrick Mahomes told us, we're going to spread the ball around. It's going to be a lot of different guys. So this is a game they go back to Juju, you think?
I think they go back to him because they're going to see a lot of zone defense. They're going to be afraid of giving up the big play. Indianapolis will be. They've been that way all season. And the defensive coordinator, Gus Bradley, played that way against them when he was both with the Chargers and the Raiders back in the day. So that's going to open things up underneath for Juju Smith-Schuster. I think he has a game similar to what we saw from him in week 1, where he's right around 13, 14 PPR points. Not PPR leagues, I'm not as excited about Juju.
Juju is kind of a mystery. This whole Chiefs receiving core is to me. I think I'm just going to view him as a number 3 wide receiver every week, and if I can find 3 better options, I will, and if I can't, then he's going to be in my lineup. I like what Dave's saying about his own defense, and that should be his best type of matchup. Hopefully the Chiefs have enough passing yards. Like we saw when Mahomes threw for 360 yards, Juju had a good game. Mahomes throws for 260 yards, Juju doesn't. It might just be that simple.
Might just be that simple. Could be him finding the end zone. He hasn't done that yet, so we'll see if he's able to score. And again, Mecole Hardman a little bit banged up, so maybe that opens up a few different things, difference of playing time for a couple of different guys. So we'll see what that means for Juju going into this matchup against the Colts. All right, Heath, let's transition to your starts for this week. And the guys that you're looking at must start plays, or at least borderline must start plays. Carson Wentz, Jeff Wilson, Garrett Wilson, Miles Sanders, and Drake London. Let's talk about the Wilsons. So the first guy that we're looking at here, Jeff Wilson, we know the situation. No Elijah Mitchell, he had 18 carries last week, and now no Tyrion Davis-Price. Broncos a little bit tougher matchup than they've seen so far through the first 2 weeks. How do we think Jeff Wilson does?
I think Jeff Wilson gets close to 20 touches like he had last week. The thing that was really hurting him with Tyrion Davis-Price is that he was taking the short yardage work. Now, I don't think they have anybody that's going to do that at this point. Maybe at some point Jordan Mason does, maybe Deebo Samuel does. I expect he has a better chance to get into the end zone. And this Broncos run defense, I thought it was going to be pretty good. They were actually the team that made Dameon Pierce look more efficient last week, so I'm not sure they're one we need to avoid.
It's really true. 4.7 yards per rush for the Broncos have allowed to opposing running backs, and 4.04 yards after contact per rush, meaning that they'll make contact with the running back and he just brushes it off. He keeps on going. 11 missed tackles on the season. That's as bad as the Giants. I might have Jeff Wilson ranked a little bit too low in my PPR league.
All right, not his any relation, but the other Wilson, Garrett Wilson, coming off an amazing performance last week as the Jets beat the Browns. How's he going to do for an encore?
You know, anytime a guy comes in with this type of pedigree and goes and earns 14 targets in his second game in the NFL, I'm just going to start him and I'm not going to worry about it anymore. I'm kind of viewing him like I have Tyler Lockett in years past. Yeah, there will probably be a couple of bad games, but his upside, I left 30 fantasy points on my bench last week. I'm not doing that again. I'm just starting Garrett Wilson. I think he's the number 1 wide receiver on this defense. Elijah Moore should eventually be the 1B right there with him. But Corey Davis might have to go away from
I just want to ask something, and it's not the same pedigree, but it's not far off. Do you feel the same way about Chris Olave, who got 13 targets in his second game and had a pretty strong performance as well?
I'm a little bit lower on Chris Olave because Michael Thomas is on the team. I don't think he's the number 1 wide receiver on his team.
Fair point. Just wanted to ask because
that's
clearly
true.
a lot of these guys are going to be tied together for the majority of their careers after coming out of Ohio State, and they're similar targets here. Not the same performance though for Garrett Wilson versus Chris Olave. You like another rookie wide receiver as well in Drake London. How's he going to do, again, coming off a big week 2?
Yeah, I do have Drake London almost exactly in the same spot as Garrett Wilson, a low-end number 2 wide receiver. It seems like he's the first look for Marcus Mariota. It's not like Mariota's dropping back, looking to Kyle Pitts, and then settling for Drake London. He's looking for Drake London, who's the number 1 wide receiver on this team. I expect 8+ targets pretty much every week for London, unless defenses just try to start taking him away, and then Pitts is going to go crazy.
Dave, just real quick, Kyle Pitts, because we're getting a lot of questions on him.
Sure.
Is it just start by default, or is this a good matchup and trust in starting Kyle Pitts?
It's kind of start by default with Kyle Pitts, because Heath's right. When you watch Mariota play, his first read is Drake London more often than not. There's a couple times where Pitts is the first read, but sometimes Pitts is covered and Mariota takes off, or he waits for London to get open, and that's when he hits him, and he did it last week. I love the matchup for the passing game for the Falcons.
All right, hopefully Drake London has another strong game. Garrett Wilson has another strong game. This rookie class starting to make some plays, which is fun to see.